Lakers Nation standing at a crossroads that nobody's talking about openly yet, but the signs are everywhere if you know where to look. Right now, at this exact moment, there's a situation developing within our organization that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of this franchise for the next decade. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that what happens in the next few months might determine whether we're celebrating championship or watching our window slam shut. Welcome to Lakers News Fan Report, your dedicated source for breaking news, insider perspectives, and the real analysis that matters for our Los Angeles. Here, you're getting the latest updates, credible insights, and a true fan's voice on every decision that shapes this legendary franchise. So stay with me through this entire video because what I'm about to walk you through is something that should concern every single bleeds purple. Let me take you back to understand how we got here because context is everything. When we brought Luka Doncic to Los Angeles, it felt like destiny, a generational talent joining the most storied franchise in basketball, the kind of move that defines eras. And for a while, it looked exactly like what we hoped it would be. Luka's brilliance on the court is undeniable. His ability to control games, to make impossible passes look routine, to score from anywhere on the floor, to elevate everyone around him. We've witnessed moments of absolute basketball poetry, the kind of performances that remind you why this game is beautiful. But beneath the highlight reel, beneath the individual brilliance, there's been something simmering we need to address head-on. This season has exposed a fundamental tension in how this organization is operating. We're asking one player to be everything for us, night after night, possession after possession. And while Luka has shoulders broad enough to carry that load, there's a breaking point for everyone. I've been watching the games closely, studying the patterns, and what I'm seeing is a player who's being asked to mask deficiencies that shouldn't exist on a Lakers roster. When number 77 sits down, our offense doesn't just decline, it often collapses entirely. That's not sustainable. That's not how championship teams are built. And more importantly, that's not fair to a player of Doncic's caliber. Now, 2026 draft approaching, and the latest mock drafts have us picking 24th over. That's not a bad position to be in. You can find legitimate NBA contributors at that spot if you draft smart. Players who can step in and provide real value immediately. Veterans in waiting who understand what it takes to win at this level. But according to recent projections, the organization is considering Chris Seneak Jr. from the University of Houston. And this is where things get complicated in ways that go far beyond just one draft pick. Let me be clear about something right away. I'm not here to trash Chris Seneak Jr. a prospect. The kid has real tools. He's a shot maker who can score from multiple levels. He's got legitimate athleticism, and there's a world where his upside translates into meaningful NBA production. In 3 or 4 years, if everything breaks, he develops what's in the work, he could be a solid rotation. Maybe even more than that. The physical abilities are there. The raw materials exist. But here's the critical question we need to ask ourselves. Is that the kind of player we should be drafting right now, given where we are as a franchise? Because when you actually break down Seneak's game, the concerns become pretty obvious. Defensive effort has been inconsistent throughout his college career. That's being diplomatic about our possession, where he's simply not engaged on that end of the floor, and defense is already our biggest issue as a team. Ball security is another red flag. Turnovers happen, especially for young players, but there's a pattern of careless decisions that suggests the mental side of the game needs significant development. And then there are the intangible, hard to quantify stuff that separates guys who succeed in the NBA from guys who flame out. Leadership, toughness, basketball IQ in real-time situations. These are areas where Seneak has question marks. So we'd be using our first-round pick on a project, a long-term investment, a player who's going to need time, patience, and developmental resources before he can contribute meaningful minutes in high-leverage situations. And on the surface, that might be fine. Teams draft for potential all the time, but context matters, and our context is dramatically different from most teams drafting in the 20s. We are not rebuilding. We are not in a patient developmental phase where we can afford to wait 2 or 3 years for picks to mature. We are operating in win-now mode with one of the greatest talents in basketball on our roster. Every single game matters. Every possession matters. Our margin for error is razor thin, and we've seen repeatedly this season what happens when things go even slightly wrong. We don't have the depth to absorb mistakes. We don't have the roster versatility to cover for players who aren't ready. And most critically, we don't have anyone besides Luka who can consistently create offense when the game gets. This is where the draft decision becomes about more than just Chris Seneak Jr. It becomes a statement about organizational philosophy, about priority, about whether we're actually serious about building a championship roster around our superstar. Because here's the brutal reality that I think some people in the organization aren't fully reckoning with. When you draft a player who can't contribute immediately, you're asking your best player to carry even more weight. You're telling Luka Doncic that not only does he need to be our primary scorer, our primary playmaker, our primary ball handler, our closer in tight games, but he also needs to cover for another young player who's learning on the job. I've heard the counter argument. Trust me, I've heard it. The argument goes something like this. Luka is so talented that he can elevate anyone. He makes everyone around him better. That's his gift. And look, there's truth to that. We've seen him turn role players into valuable contributors. We've watched him create opportunities for teammates that simply wouldn't exist with a different point. His passing vision, gravity, his ability to manipulate defenses, it creates advantages that other players can capitalize on. But there's a massive difference between elevating capable NBA players and trying to compensate for guys who fundamentally aren't ready to play at this level yet. When Luka elevates a solid role player, he's taking someone who can already contribute and making them more effective. When Luka has to cover for an inexperienced rookie who's getting lost on rotations, making careless turnovers, and getting blown by on defense, that's not elevation, that's survival, treading water. And you cannot win championships while treading water. Let's talk numbers data. This season, when Luka has been on the court, our offensive rating has been elite, top 5 in the league elite. When he sits, we drop to bottom 10 territory. That's an astronomical gap, and it's not sustainable for a team with championship aspiration. Our defense has been inconsistent all year, ranking in the middle of the pack best, and that's with Luka doing everything he can to keep us in games off. Now imagine adding a player to the rotation's known poor defensive effort, questionable decision-making. What does that do to those numbers? How much more weight are we piling onto Luka's shoulders? This isn't just about basketball analytics. This is about reading the room, understanding the human element of team building. Players watch what their organizations do. They pay attention to whether their teams are making moves to actually compete or just going through the motion. When you're an elite player, carrying the load every single night, grinding through the regular season, facing defensive schemes specifically designed to stop you, playing through the physical wear and tear, you want to see your organization matching your commitment, real, tangible move to improve the roster. And here's where we need to have an uncomfortable conversation that I don't think enough people are willing to have publicly. There are rumblings, quiet conversations, subtle indications that Luka's patience with the current situation might be wearing thin. I'm not saying he's demanded a trade. I'm not reporting that unhappy in Los Angeles. But I am saying that every great player evaluates whether their organization is truly committed to winning. And the draft is one of those key moments where that commitment gets tested. Think about it from his perspective. You're Luka Doncic. You're putting up MVP caliber numbers every single season. You're doing everything asked of you and then some. You're carrying an offensive load that would break most players. And then draft night comes, and instead of selecting someone who can help immediately, someone who can take even a small amount of pressure off your shoulders, the organization drafts a developmental project who's going to need years before he can contribute. What message does that send? The history of the Lakers organization has been built on making bold moves to put championship rosters around our Magic had Kareem and Worthy. Kobe had Shaq. Later, we've always been willing to go all in when we had transcendent talent. That's the Lakers' way. But lately, there's been a disconnect between that legacy and our actual decision-making. We're operating like a team that's trying to balance multiple timelines at once, and in the NBA, that almost never work. This is particularly relevant when you look at other contenders around the league and how they're approaching team building. The teams that are serious about winning moves help them right now. They're not banking on potential. They're not hoping that developmental players eventually figure it out. They're acquiring proven commodities who can contribute in playoff settings, who understand what champion requires, who can be trusted in the biggest moments. That's how you build around a star in the prime. And make no mistake, Luka is in his prime right now. He's not a promising young player anymore. He's not someone we can ask to be patient while we figure things out. He's at the peak of his power, and every season we don't maximize this window is a season we'll never get. That's not hyperbole. That's the reality of profession. Windows open and close faster than anyone wants to admit. admit, and once they close, they rarely open again. The Seneak pick specifically represents a broader philosophical issue that concerns me deeply. It suggests the organization is comfortable gambling on upside rather than securing production. It indicates a willingness to ask Luka to do even more rather than actually address structural problems with this roster. And it raises serious questions about whether people making these decisions fully understand the urgency of our situation. Because let's game this. Let's say we draft Seneak, and he's exactly scouting report suggests. A talented but raw player who needs significant development time. What happens during his rookie season? He plays limited minutes because he's not. He makes rookie mistakes, costs game. He gets played off the floor in tight situations because we can't trust him defense. Meanwhile, Luka is out there playing 40 minutes a night, trying to drag us to victories, despite having a rotation that isn't championship caliber. How long does that continue before frustration sets in? Now fast forward 2 years. Maybe Seneak has developed. Maybe he's figured some things out, and he's become a rotation player. But what's happened to Luka? Has he worn down carrying the... Has he watched other contenders build stronger supporting while we've been patient develop? Has he started looking around the league and wondering if there's a better situation for him somewhere else? These are the questions that keep everyone in the organization up. And here's the part that really concerns me, the part that I think represents the biggest risk we're facing right now. Once a superstar starts questioning whether their organization is truly committed to winning, that doubt rarely goes away, grows, and eventually it leads to decisions that reshape franchises. We've seen it happen countless times in the league. Stars get frustrated with mediocre roster construction. They start exploring options, and suddenly a team that should be competing for championships is rebuilding. I don't want that to be our story. I refuse to accept that as our future. But avoiding that outcome requires honest assessment of where we are and what we need to do different. It requires the organization to match Luka's commitment with moves that actually improve our championship odds in the immediate future. It requires understanding that time is not on our side here. The comparison to past Lakers drafts is instructive. We've often leaned toward upside over readiness, results in mixed best. Sometimes you hit on those developmental picks, but more often you end up wishing you'd just taken the safer, more NBA-ready player who could have helped you win games that mattered. When you're picking at 24, the temptation to swing big and hope for a home run is understandable, but we're not in a position where we can afford to miss on first-round picks. Every roster spot matters when you're trying to compete for a championship. The defensive concerns with Seneak are particularly troubling given our current roster structure. Defense has been our Achilles heel all season. We're not getting consistent stops, we're not protecting the rim effectively, and we're allowing too many easy transitions. Adding a player who's known for inconsistent defensive effort doesn't solve that problem. It makes it worse. It means Luka and our other rotation players have to cover for yet another defensive liability, which only compounds the issues we're already facing. And let's be real about two. Yes, Seneak can score in limited college against Fury. The NBA is a completely different animal. The speed is faster, the players are bigger and more athletic, and the schemes are exponentially more complex. Rookies who aren't ready to contribute often end up being negative assets on offense as well as defense, turning the ball over at crucial moments, missing rotations, and generally disrupting the flow of what you're trying to accomplish. That's not what we need next, a player like Luka. So where does all of this leave us? I think we're at a genuine crossroads. The draft decision on Seneak is going to send a clear signal about our priorities and our timeline. That pick, we're essentially telling Luka that we're not quite ready to go all in on winning right now. We're telling him to be patient while we develop another young player, and I'm genuinely concerned about how he'll respond to that message. The alternative path exists. We could draft for immediate contract. We could trade that pick for a proven veteran right now, package the rest, a more significant roster upgrade. There are options available if the organization is willing to be aggressive and prioritize the current window over potential future value. But that requires a different kind of thinking, a different kind of courage, and a different understanding of urgency. I want to be optimistic here. I want to believe that the people making these decisions understand what's at stake. I want to have faith that they see the same warning signs seeing, and they're going to adjust course accordingly. But I also know that hope isn't a strategy, and faith doesn't win championships. Action does. Smart, aggressive, win-now focused. The reality is that Luka Doncic is going to evaluate whether this is the right place for him to chase champions. He's going to look at our roster construction, our draft decisions, our organizational philosophy, and he's going to make a determination about whether we're serious about building a winner around him. And if the answer to that question is anything other than an emphatic yes, we could be looking at a future where the greatest talent we've had since Kobe decides his best chance at winning is somewhere else. That's not me being negative. That's me being realistic about how the NBA works in 2026. Players have agency, they have options, and the truly elite players don't waste their primes on situations that aren't committed to excellence. And most importantly, are you worried about Luka's long-term commitment to this franchise if we don't start making more aggressive win-now moves? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation matters, and your voice. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. Here at Lakers News Fan Report, you're getting the real analysis, tough conversation, and the insider perspective on everything Lakers. Don't miss any updates as we navigate what could be the most critical offseason in recent franchise history. I'm here breaking it all down for you, and I need you here with me. Let's go. Lakers!